Hi, I'm Eric Glesser with Spyderco. I'm going to be walking you through the Native Chief today. The Native Chief is a larger version of the Native 5. As you can see, we have the Native 5 in the middle, the Native Chief, and then this is the little Native to kind of give you a size reference. Now, why we did what we did. The Native in general was made to be kind of a humpless topped knife so that from the top it's nice and smooth. Your thumb can get all the way across the top. When you put your forefinger choil or use the forefinger choil or you choke back, you still have that motion for the thumb. Also in the closed position, it has a nice profile for the pocket, not a lot sticking out. So that was one of the original concepts with the Native design. It's the C41, meaning it's the clip it 41. It's the 41st design that we did, and one of the hopes back then was to bring more of a humpless Spyderco to the market. Now bringing the hole down and making it easy for one hand open does have its challenges in design, and we were able to achieve that with the original Native in design, so it was easily functional but yet nice and small profile. Now with the design itself, it is the 5th iteration of the Native 5, and then this is a larger version, and so it's gone through a lot of evolutions in the past, and I'll go through some of that. But what we're looking for on this knife is you get a nice 4-way clip. It'll go in both positions, or all 4 positions. It's an hourglass stamped clip. It's got a nice generous lanyard hole to attach it to. The back lock is in just the right spot. When you're making a back lock, there's a lot of attributes that we're looking for in making a quality back lock. One naturally is a nice solid blade. You don't want that thing moving around on you. When you go to close the knife, it's nice and smooth and then has a good self-close. That way it's going to be nice and safe in the pocket. And then when you go to open it, it's a nice smooth action. You also want it so that it's nice and clean at the top. You also want it so that that button is nice and clean and smooth and flush with the profile all the way through. And that's for both the open and the closed position, which does make its challenges for engineering. Also, in making the back lock, you want that button in just the right distance from the blade so that when you go to close it, it's in the right position for dropping the blade down. Also, how far you push the button and how hard the button is to push is all part of the engineering of making a back lock. And so to make that smooth operation, good self-close, all flush, strong lock, nice and solid, the attributes of a back lock are tough to hit all of them, and we're really proud of what we're able to achieve in this one. You'll notice it has a pin in here. It's a little stepped pin that goes through the back lock. It's not a screw together. We got a little bit more strength for that, but that's where that back lock is pivoting from. We're going to use Torx screws all the way through. It's going to have nice flat heads. It's going to keep it all nice and clean in the pocket. It's got a beautiful peel ply texture. We did a little bit of chamfering here so it's a little smoother on the hand. You got a lot of purchase there, so you can choke all the way back or you can choke forward. It's got generous jimping. It's got a full flat grind. It's S30V. And then when you get into the blade thickness, it's going to be a little bit thicker than some of our other back locks, but it's also thin for the length of the knife. And so with this grind and this thickness, it's going to give you a lot of cutting ability. It's going to do some well penetration in the forward cutting. The way with it just kind of reaches out there and you get that edge all nice and perfect. We're quite proud of the achievement in the grinds. And this is what we call it is a double distal taper. So when you grind it, it tapers this way as well as taper this way. And so everything goes away from the tip so that when it is going through matter, it penetrates quite well, but then slices well. And so this is the Native Chief. It's going to be a bigger package than the Native 5, but it's going to bring a lot of the great attributes that the well-developed and evolved Native 5 bring to the market. Now for the evolution of the piece, going here, this is in our Spyderco outlet store, and we have various displays in our store. This one is a Native display. This shows kind of some of the history. Back when we first started, we started with a lightweight handle. It was our first bidirectional textured handle. Nowadays we do bidirectional texturing on a lot of our knives, but the original was the very first. It wasn't as big in its bidirectional texturing, but we've gotten much better through the years, though it was the first. But you can see that nice humpless top concept. We started with hollow grinds, and then we added swedges. that false edge at the top, and then continue to develop it. This one has a left-right clip with a thimble, and this was kind of the original series, and we did a lot. Different variations. And then we came out with the Native 2, which was an all stainless version that was made in Japan. Japan is very good at their backlocks as well. And so this one still has the thimble, still has a lot of the same concepts, and then we had the plain and the 50-50 edge. And then we made other variations. And then we came out with the Native 3, which was also made in Japan. This one came with a wire clip. We came with a 3-dimensional handle. We really got into the bidirectional texturing. It's got a quite aggressive bidirectional texturing. The jimping on top you can see is quite aggressive as well. The swedge is different. And so, you know, in constant quality improvement, we continued to develop it, went to the wire clip, the 3D handle, and that was the Native 3. Then came the Native 4 with a 4-way clip, improved ergonomics, a different swedge, and that was the next evolution. And then we came out with the Native 5, which has the G10 version. It originally had liners. Since then, we've lost the liners, and we have the threads nested on the inside. They come in S30V, but also highly developed. But then we did the Native Chief. This was the original Native Chief. This was designed back in 1999. It's still engraved there. And you can tell with the current Chief, it's very much similar as the Chief designed back in 1999. But there are some better evolutions. You know, we have the 4-way clip with the threads on the inside. We have the full flat grind. This still has the old clip, but it also has a slightly different profile. This one's going to fit the hand a little bit better, particularly in the 4-finger choil. So this is kind of the direction of the Native Chief and why we did what we did and some of the history of the Native Chief. And now I guess I'll take it apart. All right, so now I'm going to begin breaking down the knife. I put out these knives just as a quick comparison, but just right away, let's get some basic weights. And so this one is right at 4.0 ounces. And then when you go to the Native 5, you're right at 3.0 ounces. And then for the little Native backlock version, you're at 2.4. And so they definitely go down in their weight as you go along. But at 4 ounces, it's a pretty good weight for a lot in the package. Then for some basic thicknesses, on the blade thickness, it's going to be, if I'm right, yep, 0.1245. Let's see, 0.125. That's right where it should be. And then you're going to find that same thing with the 0.1255, let's see, 1245, and same for the little Native, 0.1245. And when you look at these from the top, you'll see that all those blade thicknesses are right about the same, but that Native Chief just reaches out there further. Gives you a lot of thin edge cutting, kind of like a kitchen knife at the tip. But still fairly strong in that S30V, and with the thicker blade stock, it does give you pretty good strength out there. Now we're going to start taking it apart. First I'll show the clip. If I grab the right wrench. First let's do the clip. This is going to be a T6. If I remember, yep, T6. T6 Torx. Naturally, if you want to flip it, it's a very easy flip. Usually when I'm flipping it, you're going to see that the pivot has a little bit of clearance. There's a hole there in the clip to give the pivot a little bit of clearance, as well as the lanyard. The clip is a nice fit for that. I usually put in the 2 outside ones like I do here. I'd usually add a little bit of Loctite, but I'm just demonstrating quickly. And then once it's all in there, then I'll seal the first one down, and then the second one, and then the third one. And there's my flipped clip. Get a little bit tighter on. So let's take the clip all the way off. That's usually the first thing I'll do when I'm taking it apart. Then I'm going to grab my T8, start doing the pivots or the scale screws. I believe the pivot's a T10. So notice I try to keep nice little piles so I know where what is. Yep, T10. Out comes the backside pivot. Now I'm going to take off the scale. This is a stepped pin, but it should be loose enough to pop off. And now you can see the inside. You know, with the inside, you're going to find it's a nice clean cut. Everything's very flat, parallel, and clean. There's the step pin. It's got a nice phosphor bronze in there. As far as taking apart back locks, I don't always recommend it. I'm just kind of showing the inside of the lock for you guys. Some people like to take them apart for maintenance. They don't always have to be done that way, but there's how I would take it apart. A lot of times I would just stop here too if I'm just maintaining the knife and then put it back together. The more you take apart back locks, it can be a challenge. We use a special fixture when we're assembling these, but you can kind of see how everything's rotating and operating. You know, with our back locks, you know, it's got a nice smooth surface all the way. It's going to give you that great self-close. And then when it does lock in, it is a nice solid lockup, great fit and finish, a good hookup there. It's just nice and solid. You can hear it and you can feel it. So great back lock. Now I'm going to take off the blade. Now with this blade, this is a phosphor bronze washer. The phosphor bronze gives you a little bit of lubrication. It gives you some nice surface area. It's a nice sized washer. You'll see the washer is also exposed a little bit here on the lanyards. Or the threaded part for the clips. That's okay. Those screws shouldn't interfere with that at all. Now if you try to take this out, it's not going to come out because this pivot is oh, it's not unscrewed on the back side. Let me unscrew the back side. So there's my T10. Actually, let's do this part first. And so now that this is unscrewed, if I have to pop it out from the other side. You can see that this is a stepped part. It also has a little D on there. The little D is right there, a little flat spot. That's going to keep it from turning. There's a little bit of a D on the G10 on both sides. You know, those things have to line up just right. That's one of the reasons we don't recommend you taking them apart. But this doesn't come out until you take that out. It doesn't just pop out. And so now I can take off that washer. And then I can disassemble the, I think it's this one. I can do those back scale screws. So there's the part this is a tight, snug fit. I'm going to take it out for demonstration purposes, but I don't always recommend taking it out. The more it comes in and out, the more you're just wear and tearing your knife. But you're going to see those threads are all pressed into the G10. It's got a nice sturdy spring in there, nice solid back spacer, nice solid lock. Also with all the metal in the back, this could have been a lightweight plastic part, but with the metal it's going to give you more balance, more rigidity. There's the nice stepped pin. It's a good diameter, it's good length, it's good materials. That way it's going to give you a lot of strength for the back lock. You'll see the spring there is a nice solid spring. That's not really going anywhere. The threads and the screws, again, they're nice, big, and solid. They're not going anywhere. You know, it's just a nicely built, tough knife. So now I'm going to start to put it back together. I'm going to start with this back spacer first. Actually, what I do want to do is I want to add some Loctite. Now there's two ways I usually do this. I can either kind of go like this and add it to the hole in here, which is one technique. Or I can sometimes go like this, and I just kind of dip a little bit on the end of my screw. There are different techniques for that. Those are the two that I use. I get more control over exactly how much Loctite I want in there. Also, I don't use a permanent Loctite or a hard Loctite. It gets pretty hard to take apart after that. So I'm going to do the next one. You can see there's still a little Loctite on there from before during the assembly in the factory. It's a very light blue. But we're not caking a lot on there. We're just putting on enough there so it doesn't fall apart on you. So I'll get a nice snug screw in there. Then for the lock, I'm going to put in the lock pin. You'll see it gets exposed back out on that back side. You want to make sure this spring is in there all the way. That is snug. You know what? One of the things I can do is I can loosen this out. I'm gonna, before I do that, I'm gonna put this in there. That is a tight fit. Oh, there it goes. Now for this one, it just worked better for me to slide it into the end. Sometimes it works better to just come on top or to slide it in. This one slid in pretty easily though once it slid in. And I'll tighten it back down. That's one of the hardest parts about doing those back locks, is getting that spring in there. And when we're assembling them in the factory, we have fixtures to help with that. Next, I'm going to put in this little washer, and then I'm going to line up the D to help put that all together. A little drop of oil in there. Put plenty in there. Then I can put on the blade. Actually, before I put on the blade, I'll put the lock down. Now with this one's not too bad to put back together, but some of them get really challenging. So then I'm going to slide on that blade. Put another little drop there. And then I will put on the front side. And then grab a little drop of Loctite. I didn't just tighten it all the way down. I can, I think, but I typically go, just to the end before I snug it. It's still kind of loose. And then I snug everything down last. So T10, isn't it? Drop a Loctite. All right, now I could have snugged it down more. But again, I'm just a nice light screw. It's not really adjusted or tightened down at all. I'm just making sure everything's there and moving properly. Now I'll start to do some adjustments. So the first thing I do is I snug it down then. So snug, snug. I'm not trying to break it, I'm just making them snug. I'll do the back spacer first. Snug. Snug. Now with the pivot, I'm going to go snug, snug, and it usually doesn't even move. You have to back it out a little bit. That's what makes the Loctite nice. Back it out. Usually, a tenth of a turn, maybe at tops a quarter turn. It really doesn't take much. We're just giving it a little bit of clearance. These have very tight tolerances, so, oh wow. Centered blade, smooth action, solid lock, nice. That one went back together beautifully. I'm actually a tip down guy. And so backside tip down. I guess I like both tip up and tip down, but I go back and forth. It's still a little loose, this clip screw. I want to get in the other ones first before I make it snug. Kind of find their home. Oh, there it goes. Oh, moving a little funny. Alright, now I'll snug in those 3 clip screws. And you'll notice the action, still beautiful. Those clip screws are just the right length and those threads are put in just right where you can snug those down and still not interfere with any of that action. And so there's the Native Chief. Went together fairly easily. Very high performance American made product, and I hope you guys like it. Thanks for taking a few minutes with me to review the Native Chief.